Alright. I guess we are now in chapter 9 of Matthew, where we discussed about Matthew, the tax collector, following Jesus, right? And an evangelistic meal happens in okay, an evangelistic meal happens here. Okay, did we do the fasting topic? We did. All right, no, but we did fasting in chapter 6, not here, I guess. We did it in chapter 6, chapter 9. No, right? Okay. All right. So Matthew has a lot of tax collectors and sinners coming and eating with Jesus in his house. And the Pharisees saw this, and the Pharisees are like so self-righteous. The Pharisees never gave an opportunity for the tax collectors and sinners to repent. John the Baptist did, and so did Jesus. And one thing, if you notice, okay, in chapter 9, verse 11, with whom does the Pharisee have a problem? With Jesus. But whom they ask? The disciples. Now, next, in chapter 9, verse 14, or in, yeah, actually, here in other passages, the Pharisees and all are asking the question to Jesus about this. The problem here is that Jesus' disciples fast and they have a problem with that and they talk Jesus. So you have two situations. One, they have a problem with Jesus, they ask Jesus' disciples. They have a problem with Jesus' disciples, they ask Jesus. That's how a hypocrite behaves. The guy who is not right. Suppose I have a problem with you, whom do I ask? Not you. To him. And if I have a problem with him, I ask, am I straight? No. My thinking is not straight, right? That's what these guys are doing. So here, they have a problem with Jesus eating with the tax collectors and sinners, and they ask Jesus' disciples. So Jesus knew that they were asking this, and he tells them this answer. It's not the healthy who needs a doctor, it's the sick. So does that mean that the Pharisees were healthy and that the tax collectors were sick? No. Both are equally sick. The problem is that the Pharisees don't know that they are sick. The good thing is that this tax collectors know that they are sick. Which of these two will desire a healing? There are two people. Now imagine that you both have the same problem. One of you knows the sickness, that you have sickness, the other doesn't know. And when I give the medicine, who will grab the medicine from my hand? You will do it. Why? Because you know that you are a sick person. You will throw the medicine because you don't think that you need it. So here in this case, when Jesus says, it is not the healthy who need the doctor but the sick. So Jesus says, in effect, both of you are in need of a doctor because both of you are not healthy. But unfortunately, you guys don't receive it because you don't think that you are sick. They receive it because they know that they are sick. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Those who are hungry and thirsty after righteousness, they will be filled. Now, in this case, who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness? The tax collectors and sinners. They want to be associated with Jesus. Okay. And then in verse 13, Jesus says, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. That's a quotation from Hosea 6 verse 6. If you look at your footnotes, it's there. Hosea 6 verse 6. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Now, what does that mean in this context? God desires that He would show mercy to repentant sinners. God has not come, Jesus has not come to call the righteous because there is no one righteous. Jesus has come to call sinners to repentance. So with that portion is done. And then the next portion is like John's disciples come and the Pharisees come and they ask Jesus, we and the Pharisees are fasting often, but your disciples don't fast. Why is it so? Why aren't they fasting? So, what does Jesus answer in verse 15? How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The bridegroom. Why does Jesus use the word bridegroom in here? Manavalan. Why is he using that for himself? Why is he doing that? Isn't there any other metaphor that he can use about himself? Is it just an accident? No, it's not. Because look at verse 13. This is a verse from Hosea, right? Hosea 6 verse 6. So let's go to the same book. Hosea 2. Okay, let's go to Hosea. Hosea chapter 2 and verse 16. Okay, 15 and 16. Can you read that? Hmm. Akor. Hmm. 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 Okay, and then you move to verse 19 and 20. 19 and 20. Yeah, same chapter. Hmm. 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 Okay. So in these passages, how does the Lord present himself in relation to Israel? As a husband, as a bridegroom. Alright? So the Lord is calling himself as the bridegroom or the husband to Israel. And when Jesus, who is Yahweh, talks, it is not a surprise that he is using the bridegroom reference here. Because the Yahweh is the husband or the bridegroom of Israel. And that Yahweh has come down and he will be the bridegroom, right? That is why he is not directly talking about himself in that terms, but then this is what he means. Okay? When the bridegroom is here, there is no need to fast. By the way, why do you fast? Fasting is a way of seeking the presence of the Lord. You abstain from your daily routines in order to seek the presence of God. When the Lord Himself is physically with them, you don't have to do anything to seek God's presence. He is there. So you don't have to fast. You're enjoying it directly. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them. From whom? The guests of the bridegroom. That is the disciples. What is that referring to? The physical departure of Jesus from the earth. Once Jesus physically departs from the earth, then what happens? Then they will fast. So it's not that the disciples don't fast. The disciples will fast, but when is it? After Jesus goes, then they will fast. So the fasting is there. It's not now, it will be later. Okay? So John's disciples, Pharisees, and Jesus' disciples fast. But Jesus' disciples will fast after Jesus' ascension takes place. That's what Jesus says. And then in verse 16 and 17, there is a parabolic saying. Okay? So what you see there is that on an old garment, a new piece of cloth will not be stitched. What happens? If a new piece of cloth is stitched onto an old garment, the tearing of the new garment happens. The cloth will not stay. In the same way, new wine is not poured into the old wineskins. If it happens, the skin will burst because the old skin cannot handle the chemical properties of the new wine. The skin will burst. The wineskin will be ruined. So new wine should be poured to the new wineskin. Old should be poured to the old wineskin, and both will be preserved. So the wineskin and the wine will be preserved when it is new. Now, why is Jesus saying this in here? Now, Jesus says this here and also in Mark's Gospel. Mark's Gospel, chapter 2 and verse 18 to 22. Same passage. Okay. Now, why is he saying it here? Why would John's disciples fast? Let's John's disciples fast, but why would they fast? Why would they fast? Why would they do fasting? They are fasting along with John as they wait for the Messiah to come. This is the purpose for them doing the fast. And once their Messiah comes, fasting is done. Okay. This is what John's disciples fast for. The Pharisees. Why do they fast? Answer is simple. Showing off to others. And what do they show off? How do they show off? They disfigure their faces in ashes. So 2 times on Mondays and Thursdays, every Pharisee will have ash remains on their face. Showing off. Jesus' disciples. Why would they fast? Is it to gain salvation? No. They have received salvation because of Jesus' death, and they seek the Lord's presence. So one act has 3 different purposes for 3 different groups. Understood? The fasting is the same for all 3 groups, but the intentions are different. In the Old Testament, people used to fast for the coming of the Messiah or to repent of their sins and all that. So what is happening is these 3 purposes can't go together. One person can't fast for all 3 purposes. Understood? Okay. One act is defined by Jesus. Jesus' ascension becomes the reason for the fasting of the disciples of Jesus. Okay. The Pharisees do that act because of a false intention, a wrong intention. So, one person can't have 2 intentions in doing the same thing. The Pharisees' act of fasting is without Jesus in the middle. The Christians' act of fasting is with Jesus in the middle. In other words, a Pharisee's fasting cannot coexist with a Christian's fasting because the intentions are totally different. When a Christian fasts to show off, what happens? The fasting has no value, it is spoiled. Correct? That's what is being mentioned. Okay, now let's take this issue of fasting with other religions also. Do Hindus fast? For what? For worship, right? Okay. As in they are doing it to gain salvation, right? So it is with the Muslims. once in a year during the month of Ramadan they fast. Okay, and again that is to earn their salvation. For as a Christian is concerned, as far as a Christian is concerned, a Christian fasts not to gain salvation, but it's to show the reflection of their salvation. So, when a Muslim becomes a Christian, the intention of fasting differs. Or when a Hindu becomes a Christian, the intention of fasting is changed. You got me? That same intention can't be carried forward because of the Jesus element in this. Understood? Huh? Once again. For example, let's say a Muslim fasts. His fasting is because he wants to earn salvation. Now, when a person believes in Jesus Christ, he receives the salvation that Jesus earned. He doesn't earn. The person doesn't earn, Jesus earns. And because he receives the salvation that Jesus gives him by grace through faith, this person's act of fasting is not to earn salvation, it is a reflection of salvation. He, the believers in the church at Antioch, they worshipped and fasted. Acts 13 verse 1. Okay? They worshipped and fasted. Is it to gain salvation? No. It was a reflection. As they worshipped, they forgot about food. Understood? Acts 13 verse 1 is what I'm talking about. So there people fasted not because they wanted to be saved, or not because they wanted to show off. That's hunger strike. Nirahara Samara. That's hunger strike. You are, see, as I keep telling always, fasting is not something that you do as a hunger strike to get something from God. Fasting, biblical fasting, is to seek God's presence, and as you do that, you forget food. Like yesterday, when you watched the match, how many of you took a break to get to drink water? You didn't. You were so involved in that, unfortunately. Okay? And you were so involved in that that you forgot to eat or drink. Because for you, eating or drinking is not the main thing. You wanted to see India win, unfortunately. But that's what fasting is. You are involved so much in seeking God's presence that you want God. You're not looking for things that God gives. You're looking for God Himself. And in that you forget eating or drinking. And that is not to gain salvation. It's because you have received salvation. You have received it and you want more of God. That's what it is. Whatever you see as fasting today is what we call as hunger strike. Samaram, or doing a strike. Until I get my demands, I'm not moving from here. We are looking at God as a government. That's not how we should look at fasting. I guess there should be a lot of things that should change with regard to that. But in the Bible, I don't see anyone doing that. I don't see anyone fasting for something that is essential. See, this kind of demon activity does not go out except by prayer and fasting. You're talking about Mark chapter 9, 9 and verse 29. You're talking about that, right? ഈ ഒരു വക പ്രാർത്ഥനയിലും ഉപവാസത്തിലും അല്ലാതെ നീങ്ങി പോകത്തില്ല. This kind can come out only by prayer and fasting. Right? That's what you're referring to. So again, prayer is the first thing. And in prayer, you are fasting side by side. As in, you are so intently involved in seeking God's presence that you forget to eat. Like when somebody who is very dear to you, when that person is in hospital, do you feel like having KFC? No. You wouldn't feel about going out and having good food. You will want to have food, but not tasty food. You're not thinking about tasty food at that time. Understood? Yeah. So that's what it is. So coming back to chapter 9 and verse 18 onwards, okay? 18 to 26 is about this man named Jairus. So, now, Jairus is not named here, but he is named in Mark. Okay, this passage is there even in Luke as well. So we are looking at Mark chapter 5 and verse 21 onwards, 21 to 43. So Mark 5 verse 21 to 43 and uh, Luke's Gospel chapter 8 verse 40 to 56. So let's do something. Okay, uh, Badal and Babylon, Galileon. Badal and Galileon can look at Matthew. Um, Babylon and Feroz. You both can do. Okay, Babylon, Feroz, and huh? Rintu Pradhan. Yes, full name yes. Rintu. You three can go look at Mark, and the two of you can look at Luke. Okay, Luke chapter 8, verse 40 onwards for you. The three of you, Mark chapter 5 and verse 21 to 43, and the two of you with Matthew 9 verse 18 to 26. Now, according to Matthew, is the daughter dead or alive? According to Matthew chapter 9 verse 18, is the daughter of the synagogue leader dead or alive? Dead. But according to Matthew and according to Mark and Luke, she is dying. Okay, she is yet to die. Luke also, right? Luke also she is yet to die. Okay, so then is there a contradiction here? Obviously, this girl will eventually die, but why does Matthew say that this daughter died? As in, the leader says, "My daughter has just died." Why does Matthew present it like this? Whereas Mark and Luke say, "My daughter is dying. Little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed." So this girl is about 12 years old. Huh? 12 years. Now, uh, why this difference? When we look at these synoptic gospels, these sort of differences will come up. So why do you think this difference is there? Anything that you guys want to think about or say? Why this difference? One person says dead, other person says it's going to be dead. Why? Okay, let's just wait. Okay, according to Mark and Luke, the woman who was ill for 12 years, she got healed also, right? At this time. So that's also mentioned in Matthew. From that point, who all have gone to the synagogue ruler Jairus' home? According to Mark and Luke. Okay, now I'll tell you this. Okay. Matthew does not say anything regarding who went with Jesus inside the room. Check it out. Matthew does not say anything about who was with Jesus when uh, Jesus raised this girl from the dead. Whereas Luke says something. When he arrived, verse 51, when he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. So in that room, Jesus, Peter, James, John, Jairus and wife, and the dead daughter. 7 of them are in the room. Okay. So according to Luke, it said, so according to Luke, the other disciples are outside the house. These 3 disciples are inside, according to Luke. But then if you look at it according to Mark, that at the point where the woman was healed, Jairus' home's servants come and mention that his daughter is dead. And Jesus says, don't be afraid, believe. He did not let anyone follow him. So Luke is presenting that all of them went to the house, and from there into the home, these 3 disciples went. But Mark presents it like this. At the place of healing of the woman, from there he did not allow the other 9 to follow. He allowed only this 3 to follow. So this is what happened. At the point where this woman was healed, Matthew stayed there. He didn't go and see it inside. So to this event, Matthew is not an eyewitness. Which is why at the point that Jairus came and talked, he hasn't moved an inch. Matthew hasn't moved an inch inside. That is why at that point, the girl is dead. Whereas Mark is listening to all of these things from Peter and writing it. Mark is not an eyewitness to all of these things. Okay, I hope I'm making sense to you. Okay, Mark is not an eyewitness to whatever has happened. But Mark gets all of this information from Peter. Because Mark is a spiritual son to Peter. Okay. So from Peter's account, Mark writes these things. And Peter is an eyewitness because Peter is also inside the room. So from the point where the woman got healed, Peter goes with Jesus. And so for Peter, there is this before the woman came and after the woman came. He is witness to both. The woman got healed, Jairus' daughter got resurrected. So Peter sees both with his eyes. So at the point that the woman got healed, the daughter was yet dying. Okay? Understood. At the point that the woman got healed, the girl was still yet to die. That is why when Mark and Luke copies from Mark in this. When Mark is writing this, Mark presents the daughter as dying when the woman got healed and dead after the woman got healed. Did you understand? Okay. Which is why this difference comes. Which is why Matthew hasn't seen the girl resurrecting. He only listened to it later. So that's why the girl's death is the only thing that he knows. And he didn't see the girl's resurrection after that. So that's why the girl's death is recorded directly by Matthew. Mark talks about the girl close to death and death. It's because of these two differences. Okay. So a synagogue ruler. Okay. Now where is the synagogue located? We have no clue. No mention is there, right, regarding the location. Where is it? Matthew or Mark doesn't say anything, but then this is the Jewish area. We know that much. We do not know much about the location. So a synagogue ruler came and knelt before him, before Jesus, as in he is totally helpless. Totally helpless. And says, my daughter has just died, or in other words, in the other passages, my daughter is at the point of death. She's 12 years old, come and heal her. So Jesus got up and went with him and told the disciples. Now at that point, a woman had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. So she comes And she had now about the woman, Matthew doesn't say anything except for the fact that she had faith that she would be healed if she touches the cloak of Jesus. But why would she touch the cloak of Jesus? She touched the edge of the cloak. She came from behind. No? Why would she touch that? Now, before we move ahead, look at what Mark has to say about this. So let's all turn to Mark's Gospel, chapter 5, verse 25 and 26. Okay, so one, she had so much of physical suffering over the last 12 years. Okay, so much of physical suffering, so much of treatments she took, but nothing happened. Instead of getting better, she grew worse. Okay, so a woman like this, she has so much of physical suffering, and she is increasing in her physical sufferings. Second, she spent all that she had, so financial loss is also happening to her. Okay, and the third thing, for a woman who has constant bleeding, can she have children? She can't have children. Her uterus is bleeding, so she can't have children. Okay, to not have a child in that society is a matter of curse. People will see you as a cursed person. Right? So the society's pressure is also there in this scenario. And along with that, if you look at the book of Leviticus, now Leviticus details some things with regard to this. So we will just quickly touch upon this and finish the class for today. So I'll just give you the reference for that. You don't have to read this completely. Okay, Leviticus 15 and verse 25, 26, 27. You read that. Menstrual means for the last 12 years she has been what? Unclean, ritually unclean, which means she can't be a partaker of any festivals, she can't be in any crowds. When you look at verse 26, any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean. Wherever she lies, she'll be unclean. Anyone who touches those beds will be unclean. So she is spreading uncleanness for the last 12 years. This is a bad thing to be. I mean, imagine that you are having 3 years back, if you are affected by COVID, you would be isolated. And you have to remain in that isolation until you are tested COVID negative. Correct? Now, this is the scenario that this lady is suffering. If she is in that crowd, so the crowd is there, and unknowingly everyone is being affected in that crowd. Understood? So, she is physically suffering, financially suffering. As far as childbearing is concerned, she is suffering, and as a society, she is suffering in the society. This is why, I mean, for 12 years to be going on like this, it's not easy. It's not a small thing. Which is why she heard about Jesus and she touched. She touched Jesus because she wanted that healing. She wanted that escape from all these problems. Okay? She wanted to be financially stable. She wanted to have a family. Because comparing this, Jairus' daughter is 12 years old. This woman has been suffering for 12 years. So if she hadn't had this problem, she would have had a daughter or a child as old as this girl who was going to die. See the comparison there? Yeah, so we will look at this next time. Okay.